Alison Sargent is with me on the set to take a look at what the papers have been saying today. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Jeannie.
Lots of focus again this Wednesday on the fallout from that final U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Yeah, the U.S. may have left Afghanistan, but Afghanistan is not going to stop being a problem for the U.S. That seems to be the message from this front page cartoon from Patrick Chapat in Swiss paper Le Temps. We see there that Taliban fighter holding up a sign to departing U.S. soldiers that says, "Afghanistan won't leave you." The Guardian, meanwhile, has a similar message for the U.S. in their editorial today. The paper writes that America's responsibilities don't end with its departure. According to The Guardian, the U.S. not only has to ensure that the Taliban keeps up their promises, they say the country also has to take responsibility for its actions, beginning with the recent U.S. drone strike that killed 10 civilians, including 6 children.
There's also been a lot of talk in the papers, Alison, still about the pandemic, and in particular, the latest false miracle drug for COVID-19.
That's right, false miracle drug. So to be clear, doctors say that this does not protect or help work against COVID-19. This drug is called ivermectin. If you've never heard of it, that's because it's mostly for animals. It's used to fight against parasites in horses and other livestock. The FDA warns that taking large doses can cause serious harm to humans. Still, though, Jeannie, it's become a real problem in the U.S. We see in this Guardian article, a judge in Ohio recently ordered a hospital to give ivermectin to a COVID patient whose family was demanding it, despite the doctors at the hospital advising against it. We've also seen people buying out the pills and the drug that is intended for animals. So big problem in the U.S. Meanwhile, French paper Le Figaro has some positive news today about real treatments for COVID-19. One of them is a French drug, XAV19, that is almost done with its phase 2 trials. The paper says it could be available in France at least by the end of the year. The paper also mentions a drug called Actemra that is already being used in the U.S. successfully and is currently being evaluated by Europe's medical agency. So some 70% of adults here in Europe are now vaccinated, but with all of those breakthrough cases, it is always good to know that there are new treatments on the way.
There's a lot of sports news as well today, Alison. At the stroke of midnight last night was the deadline for European football teams to change up their players for the coming season.
The end of summer transfer season, an exciting and stressful time for European football fans, particularly Spanish soccer fans this year. As we see on the front page of Spanish sports paper AS, the big last-minute bombshell was news about French player Antoine Griezmann. He is leaving Barca and is going to be on loan to Atletico Madrid for at least 1 year. Now, Atletico is where he used to play before joining Barca for a lot of money back in 2019. The paper writes that Griezmann never really integrated with the team, though, and Barcelona has also been struggling financially, so they had to give up those expensive players. They also gave up Messi earlier this month to PSG. Now, the big story being watched, though, was whether another French player, Kylian Mbappe, would leave PSG for Real Madrid. Paris ultimately refused Real's final bid of 200 million euros. Marca, another Spanish sports paper, though, is convinced that Mbappe is going to end up in Madrid after his contract with PSG ends next year. So Spanish papers not disappointed yet. They're holding on to hope that Mbappe will come to them eventually. And in the meantime, Real Madrid picked up another rising French star. This is 18-year-old Eduardo Camavinga. He's pictured on the paper's front page down here in the bottom left.
18 years old. They're so young. All right, let's stay in the sports world, Alison, for your next story. There's a very heated debate on now about bathroom breaks in tennis.
Yeah, the U.S. Open is currently underway, and earlier this week, Andy Murray lost one of his matches after his opponent took an 8-minute bathroom break. As we read in the Washington Post, Murray basically accused his opponent, Stefanos Tsitsipas, of doing it on purpose. He said he lost his respect for him. The Washington Post explains that there is no time limit on bathroom breaks in tennis, and for younger generations, quote, "it appears to be just another weapon like a scorching forehand or a serve." The Post also points out, though, that Murray himself has been guilty of taking long bathroom breaks in the middle of matches that he was losing in the past. The paper says Murray took a career-changing restroom detour during the Open final in 2012 against Novak Djokovic. And Djokovic, the paper says, is also one of the masters of the bathroom break. So apparently everyone does it. It's a known strategy, and maybe it's time time for a time limit.
That's crazy. All right, let's wrap up now with a new study that found differences in the way men and women are perceived when they mumble.
That's right, Jeannie, and I'm going to try and speak clearly as I explain this one because it makes me super aware of it. The Times reports that researchers in the United States found that men who mumble were more attractive to women. And as we see in the article's headline here, the reverse was true for women. They had to speak clearly to be attractive to men. Obviously, a heterosexual study also falls into that category of scientific study that really confirms sexist stereotypes. To me, it's a reminder of one of the many ways in which women have to work harder. And I'm definitely someone who I think tends to mumble, and from now on, I think I'm going to try and think of it as a feminist act.
Allison, thank you for that. Allison Sargent with today's Press Review.